Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about two new Berkley Power Bait Max Scent craws that came out. I'm excited for both of these as an individual that loves to flip and pitch and fish a lot of shallow cover. I think these baits are going to be great, but they're not just going to be good for shallow. You're going to be able to utilize these almost throughout the entire water column. So the two baits that I'm talking about, this guy right here, this is the Max Scent Stank Bug, and then this one right here is the Max Scent Crud Craw. So I want to walk you through the differences between both of these, try to point out some of the ways that I'm going to be utilizing it, where and when I'm going to be throwing it, which hopefully helps you guys catch a few extra fish because at first glance, they are pretty similar. But there are some differences as well, and the differences are what make the big difference when it comes to generating more strikes. Okay, so let's talk about these two baits right here. The first thing that we need to address, again, is the material. So this is the Berkley Power Bait Max Scent material. So for some of you that are not familiar with respect to the Max Scent, that's the purple bag, right? So you can see it says Power Bait Max Scent right here on the side compared to the standard Power Bait material, which are the yellow bags that you may or may not be able to see hanging on my wall. But this is the Max Scent material anytime you see the purple. So what do you get with the Max Scent material? Well, there's a couple of things. The main thing about the Max Scent material is the dispersion that you get of scent. So it releases scent into the water, which helps draw fish to it, helps fish bite it, helps the fish hold on to it, all positives. On top of that, you get a very good natural feel to the material. It doesn't feel quite like a lot of your traditional soft plastics. And it also doesn't really look like a lot of your traditional soft plastics. They all have more of a matte finish versus your shiny appearance that you get from a lot of your soft plastics. So when you mix that all together, you get the Max Scent material that's made to use these baits. And over the years, when Max Scent first came out, the flatworm was a huge hit in the smallmouth world. And there were a lot of people out there that thought, the Max Scent material was really geared towards smallmouth, but it is 100% not. It is excellent for not just all species of bass, but pretty much all game fish out there respond very well to the Max Scent material. So much so that, like, if you watch my channel on a regular basis, you know how much I rely on baits like the Berkley General, the Max Scent General, the Creature Hog. Those are two baits I have tied on pretty much everywhere I go. Heck, I won the Mississippi River event in 2023 on a Max Scent General. I caught every fish I weighed in that tournament, I think, except for one, was caught on a 5-inch Max Scent General. And those were all largemouth. The one fish I weighed in that was not a largemouth was actually a smallmouth. So there you go. Anyways, okay, so now once you know what the Max Scent material is, the question is, so what about these two baits? Well, there's a couple of things that I just want to mention. First and foremost, in the Max Scent material lineup, there aren't all that many different versions of bait. It's still an expanding lineup. So these really come in handy in terms of filling a craw style bait void, in my opinion, that Berkley had. So when you compare the two baits, though, they do look pretty similar, especially from a body style. The body is very, very similar. In fact, all it is really just a smaller version. So your Stank Bug is a 3.5-inch. Your Crud Craw is a 4-inch bait. And the body itself, so not the kicker legs, but just the body itself, is basically just a scaled down version. The difference, not just in size, but the big difference with respect to this bait comes in with respect to the flappers. So you can see on your Stank Bug, the profile is narrower. The flapper legs are smaller. They don't stick out to the bait nearly as much. And that's going to change the action of the bait. And this is where I think it's important to understand the difference in the two baits so that you can apply it in the situations that you're fishing. So let's just kind of talk about the Stank Bug. With respect to the Stank Bug, to me, this is really going to come in handy in a couple of different situations. And again, it goes back down to the legs. So the big difference in the leg is instead of having a big flapper style motion that you're going to get out of the Crud Craw, you're going to have a much tighter, compact movement. So anytime I'm fishing really clear water, I don't want big flapper legs. I'm not a huge fan of big flapper legs in clear water. So I'm going to naturally want to go with the stank bug in that situation. And it does not hurt, in my opinion, either that the overall frame of the bait is smaller. In clear water, I generally like to go more finessey, and that's what I would say that this is. When I'm fishing muddy water or rivers, that's when I really like to go with something that's got more motion, just like the Crud Craw with those big kicker legs. Uh, the reason for that is they move a lot more water, right? So when you get a bait like this and these legs are really swinging, it pushes the water, it helps the fish locate the bait in muddy water and in current. And one other reason I like bigger kicker legs in current is because a lot of times for me, I'm actually flipping laydowns or cut banks, things where I actually want my bait to kind of sweep in the current. Well, the more bulk that you have to your bait, especially when you're talking about appendages, the better the bait flows and sweeps down current. And from that standpoint, I really like throwing cross style baits in current. And that's one of the places where I think a Crud Craw is going to come in really handy. All right, so another place where I think I'm gonna really like the stank bug and over say the Crud Craw is when I'm fishing and when I'm punching different types of material, whether that's sawdust mats, whether that's floating grass that's been ripped up, or maybe I'm punching hydrilla or milfoil. I like a more streamlined bait that will help punch through those canopies. When you have smaller kicker legs that don't stick out as far, the bait just punches through better. So from that standpoint, if I'm fishing really heavy topped out matted material, I'm going to go with the stank bug over the Crud Craw. Now, to counter that, if I'm fishing laydowns or I'm fishing some rock, that's where I'm going to go with the Crud Craw, because in those cases, I generally want something that's just going to flow through that cover and kick up some motion, and I'm not really worried about getting the bait hung up, say, on a canopy of something where I'm trying to punch through it. I'm really just trying to create motion and get a bait that's going to flow through that cover nicely. But those are two of the main differences. Now, if we're just talking about overall setups, overall techniques, a lot of the time you're going to be able to use these. They're going to be interchangeable. Uh, if you're talking about your Carolina rigs, this guy, if I'm fishing around smallmouth, I'm going to throw the stank bug. This is going to be a killer Carolina rig bait. If I'm fishing, again, maybe a little bit dirtier water or water where I'm fishing more around largemouth, maybe a Tennessee Valley, Authority Lakes, Kentucky Lake, Pickwick, places like that, Carolina rig with the Crud Craw is going to be really good. But there's still great Carolina rig baits, both of them. So if you're talking Texas rigs, you're talking Carolina rigs, I do think from a potential drop shot standpoint as well as a shaky head standpoint or a Ned rig standpoint, I would rather go with the stank bug. Again, just a smaller profile where I'm really not looking to get big kicker motions that I'm going to get out of the Crud Craw, but maybe I'm fishing a swim jig and I'm looking for a trailer. Between these two, I'm probably going to choose the Crud Craw as my trailer, especially if I'm looking to do something like the Alabama Shake. For an Alabama Shake is where you keep your swim jig up near the surface and you're shaking the rod tip. And that's where your big appendages like this will really come into play to help float that bait. To do the Alabama Shake, you want to keep your bait up near the surface. I think it could also be really good on a wobble head. If I'm fishing clear water conditions, probably generally are colder water conditions, that's when I'd go with the stank bug. But if I've got some off-colored water in the summer months, I'd probably go with the Crud Craw. So both of these, I think, would really shine under those situations. It really comes down to the time of year, the conditions that I'm fishing when I'm going to choose between the stank bug and the Crud Craw. The reality is there's a lot of times where they're going to be interchangeable, but there's also a lot of times where I think you're going to have better success using one over the other. For me, that's going to come down to water clarity, the time of year, the cover that I'm fishing, and a little bit the species that I'm fishing, because I do think that your stank bug will be a little bit better when it comes to your smallmouth fishing, and your crud craw for your largemouth, spotted bass probably a little of both. But ultimately, I think both of these are going to have a big place in my tackle box. I expect to catch a lot of fish on these, and I do think that they have a time and a place for both. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.